Imagine a world where Hollywood's coolest star meets the King of Kings. Yes, you heard that right. Matthew McConaughey just dropped a revelation that's left everyone speechless. Known for his laid-back charm and Oscar-winning performances, McConaughey isn't exactly the guy you'd expect to announce a face-to-face with Jesus. But 6 days ago, he claims that's exactly what happened. And what Jesus told him? Well, it's not just inspiring, it's downright life-changing. How did this moment shake McConaughey to his core? And what could this mean for the way we look at faith, fame, and the unexplainable? Matthew McConaughey has always been one of those Hollywood stars who stands out, right? Not just for his charm or his iconic all right, but for his ability to keep things real. He's never shied away from speaking about his faith, his family, or the deeper questions of life. But this time, he's taken things to a whole new level. A few days ago, he came out with a jaw-dropping revelation that's got everyone talking. He claims he met Jesus. Yep, you heard that right. Matthew McConaughey says he met Jesus 6 days ago, and it wasn't just a passing moment. According to him, it was an experience that's changed everything. Let me walk you through what we know. McConaughey shared his story during an interview that felt more like a confessional than your average Hollywood chat. He was calm, but passionate, and you could tell he wasn't joking around. He described it vividly, almost like you were right there with him. It happened in a quiet moment, away from the noise of fame and flashing cameras. He was alone, reflecting, when he felt a presence so overwhelming it could only be described as divine. And then he says, Jesus appeared to him. Not in some vague, metaphorical way, but as a real, undeniable presence. McConaughey said he could feel it, see it, and even hear it. Now, I know what you might be thinking. This sounds like something straight out of a movie, right? But to McConaughey, it was far more personal and profound. He didn't shy away from sharing what Jesus told him either. The message was simple yet powerful. Focus on truth, love, and humility. McConaughey explained that these words struck him like lightning. They weren't just abstract ideas, they were a call to action, a reminder of what really matters in a world that often feels chaotic and shallow. He said it wasn't about religion or preaching to anyone, it was about living authentically and staying grounded in values that truly matter. If you've followed McConaughey over the years, this revelation might not come as a total shock. He's always been vocal about his faith. Remember that unforgettable Oscar speech where he thanked God before anyone else? That wasn't just for show. Faith has always been a guiding force in his life, shaping not only his decisions, but also his outlook on everything from acting to fatherhood. But even for someone like him, this experience seems to have been a turning point. It wasn't just about reaffirming his beliefs, it was about rediscovering his purpose. What's really interesting is how this story is stirring up conversations everywhere. Whether you're a believer or a skeptic, it's hard not to be intrigued. Was this a vision, a spiritual awakening, or simply a deeply personal experience that's hard to put into words? For McConaughey, it doesn't seem to matter how others interpret it. He's not trying to convince anyone or prove anything. He's just sharing what happened, raw and unfiltered. And honestly, there's something refreshing about that in a world where celebrities often stick to scripted answers and PR-friendly stories. This moment feels like the next chapter in a life that's always been about more than just the spotlight. McConaughey has always been a storyteller, and this might just be his most compelling story yet. He's known for digging deep, whether it's in his roles or his personal life, and this encounter with Jesus seems to have pushed him even further. He said the experience gave him a clarity he hasn't felt in years, a clarity about who he is, what he stands for, and what he wants to leave behind. So, here we are, talking about one of Hollywood's biggest stars claiming to have met Jesus. It's not the kind of headline you see every day, but with McConaughey, you almost expect the unexpected. Whether you believe his story or not, it's impossible to deny the sincerity in his voice when he talks about it. This wasn't just another interview for him. It was a moment of vulnerability, of sharing something deeply personal with the world. At the end of the day, maybe that's what makes this story so captivating. It's not just about what McConaughey experienced, it's about the way he's using it to remind us all to pause, reflect, and think about what truly matters. And in a world that's often too busy and noisy to pay attention, maybe that's exactly the message we need right now. The moment Matthew McConaughey's revelation hit the public, it was like lighting a match in a room full of dry wood. Everyone had something to say, and honestly, how could they not? A Hollywood star claiming to meet Jesus isn't just another day in the news cycle. Some people were in awe, completely captivated by his honesty and the sheer weight of his experience. Others, well, let's just say they weren't buying it. The reactions have been as varied as you can imagine, and the story has taken on a life of its own. Let's start with his fans. For a lot of people, this wasn't a surprise. McConaughey has always been seen as a grounded guy, someone who doesn't get swept up in the superficial side of fame. So when he opened up about meeting Jesus, many of his followers took it as just another layer of his authenticity. Social media lit up with posts from fans who felt inspired, even moved by his words. Some said it gave them hope or strengthened their own faith. Others shared how they'd had similar experiences and were thrilled to see someone as famous as McConaughey talk about it so openly. It was like he gave them permission to embrace their beliefs without fear of judgment. But of course, not everyone saw it that way. The skeptics came out in full force. You had your usual critics who questioned everything about his story. Was it a dream? Was it just his imagination? Some even suggested it was a publicity stunt, though honestly, anyone who knows McConaughey knows he doesn't really need any extra attention. Still, the doubts were loud. People debated whether this was a genuine spiritual experience or just a moment of personal reflection that got exaggerated along the way. And then there were those who dismissed it entirely, calling it too far-fetched to take seriously. It didn't stop there. The media couldn't get enough of the story. Every outlet, from celebrity gossip sites to major news networks, wanted a piece of the action. Some headlines were supportive, praising McConaughey for his courage to share something so personal. Others took a more critical tone, questioning his motives or diving into theological debates about whether such encounters are even possible. Honestly, the media frenzy almost became a story of its own. It wasn't just about what McConaughey said, it was about how everyone else was reacting to it. What made things even more interesting was the response from religious communities. You'd think something like this would be universally celebrated, but it wasn't that simple. Some religious leaders saw it as a powerful testimony, a reminder that divine experiences can happen to anyone, even a Hollywood star. They praised McConaughey for speaking out and used his story as an example in sermons and talks, but others were more cautious. They questioned whether his experience aligned with traditional teachings and whether it was wise to put so much emphasis on one person's account. It sparked debates in churches, forums, and even among theologians. And let's not forget about Hollywood. The entertainment industry has always had a complicated relationship with faith. For some of McConaughey's peers, his story was seen as a brave move. Sharing something so deeply personal in such a public way isn't easy, especially in an industry that often leans toward skepticism. A few fellow actors and celebrities came out in support, applauding his honesty, but there were others who stayed silent, maybe unsure of how to respond or worried about what their own stance might say about them. Through it all, McConaughey has remained as steady as ever. He hasn't backtracked or tried to soften his story to make it more palatable. Instead, he's stood by every word, making it clear that this experience wasn't just a fleeting moment for him. It was something that shifted his perspective in a way he couldn't ignore, and honestly, that's part of what makes this so fascinating. Whether you believe him or not, you can't deny the conviction in his voice when he talks about it. It's rare to see someone so famous be this vulnerable, especially about something as polarizing as faith. McConaughey didn't just tell a story. He opened a door to conversations that people don't always feel comfortable having, and maybe that's why this has resonated with so many people. It's not just about him meeting Jesus. It's about the way his story has made people reflect on their own beliefs, doubts, and experiences. In a way, the reactions say as much about us as they do about McConaughey. Whether we're inspired, skeptical, or somewhere in between, his story forces us to confront our own ideas about faith, spirituality, and the mysteries of life. And love him or hate him, you have to admit, he's got everyone talking. Now that the dust is settling a little, you can't help but wonder, what's next for Matthew McConaughey? I mean, it's not every day a celebrity comes out and says they met Jesus. This isn't just some random story he's going to leave behind. It's clearly something that's impacted him deeply. And knowing McConaughey, he's not the type to keep quiet about it. If anything, this might just be the start of something bigger. For one, it sounds like this experience has given him a renewed sense of purpose. He's always been about living authentically, right? That whole just keep living philosophy of his isn't just a catchy tagline, it's how he approaches life. But now it feels like he's stepping into a new chapter. He's talked about how this encounter with Jesus made him realize the importance of truth, love, and humility, and you can bet he's going to find ways to reflect that in everything he does. Whether it's through his roles, his philanthropy, or even just how he interacts with people, it feels like McConaughey is doubling down on the things that matter most to him. You've also got to think about how this could influence his career. Hollywood loves a good redemption story or a character searching for meaning, and McConaughey is no stranger to playing those kinds of roles. But after something as life-altering as this, it wouldn't be surprising if he starts picking projects that align more with his spiritual outlook. Maybe we'll see him take on roles that explore deeper themes. Or maybe he'll even create something entirely new. A movie, a documentary, who knows? He's always been a storyteller at heart, and this experience feels like it's just begging to be told in a creative way. At the same time, this isn't just about McConaughey. His story is already rippling out and touching other people's lives. Fans are talking about how it's made them reflect on their own beliefs, or even just pause to think about what's really important. And let's be honest, in a world that feels more divided than ever, a message about love and humility isn't a bad thing. It's almost like McConaughey has become a sort of accidental messenger, sparking conversations that a lot of us didn't even realize we needed to have. But of course, not everyone's going to see it that way. There are always going to be skeptics and critics, and that's fine. In fact, McConaughey himself would probably agree that it's healthy to question things. After all, this isn't about convincing anyone of anything. It's about sharing an experience and letting people take from it what they will. And maybe that's the beauty of it. Whether you believe his story or not, it's opened up space for people to talk about faith, spirituality, and what it means to live a meaningful life. What's really striking, though, is how grounded McConaughey seems through all of this. He hasn't turned it into a spectacle or tried to capitalize on the attention. Instead, he's just stayed true to who he is, open, thoughtful, and unapologetically himself. And in a way, that makes his story even more compelling. It's not about flashy headlines or dramatic claims. It's about a man who had an experience that changed him and decided to share it, plain and simple. So, where does this leave us? For McConaughey, it feels like the start of a journey that's going to shape him in ways we can't even predict yet. For the rest of us, it's a chance to think about our own lives and what we value most. Maybe you believe his story, maybe you don't. But either way, it's a reminder that there's more to life than just going through the motions. And in a world that's constantly pulling us in a million different directions, that's not a bad thing to be reminded of. In the end, McConaughey's story is about more than just meeting Jesus. It's about connection, purpose, and the search for meaning in a world that can sometimes feel overwhelming. And whether you see it as divine intervention or just a deeply personal moment, it's hard not to respect the honesty and vulnerability he's shown in sharing it. Who knows what's next for him, or for any of us for that matter? But one thing's for sure, McConaughey's journey is far from over.